Be that as it may, it doesn't answer my question, General Ray. Ray held Baroness Saradnik's dark gaze for a moment, then looked past her shoulder to the entrance of his pavilion where the arm of one of his sentries could be seen propping up a spear. His guards seemed completely oblivious to the fact that the interior was under a silence effect and had been instructed to keep everyone else out. You remind me of my parents, my lady. He turned his attention back to her. They were both idiots. Loyal, useful idiots, but idiots nonetheless. He felt a sneer forming on his face and he forced it away. There was no point in harboring bitterness over the past. My father's father was a spare who won our house's title through his service. My mother's father was the same. My grandfathers were comrades in arms. They enlisted together, fought in the same squad, became sergeants in the same company and then captains in the same division. They were brothers in arms who had forged bonds in battle stronger than blood. They passed the values instilled into them by the army to my mother and father. Loyalty, service, honor. To be a sword of the empire. My father became a dutiful soldier and my mother was the dutiful wife of a soldier. He did his duty abroad while she did her duty at home and I grew up with those same aspirations to duty, until I saw where duty led. For the first time in Ray's recollection, Lady Zaradnik's mask cracked. Her lips slipped ever so slightly, dark eyes hardening at end of his words. Ray peered at her, then snorted. So you do know what lies at the end of duty, he said. You know the wilderness through which duty will lead you. Honor lies at the end of duty, the Baroness replied. It is our mantle as we walk through that wilderness. Is it? Ray raised an eyebrow. My mother died when I was 7, fighting a monster that encroached on our borders before the army could respond. It went through 3 villages after that and then left, never to be seen again. They never found her body. How do you think the Empire honored her? Silence fell between them, but only for a breath. By her look, she knew. That's right, Ray said. Nothing. Honors in the Empire go to men and women of merit. Tangible rewards in human society are distributed to those who achieve tangible gains. Getting eaten by a monster is neither of those. Duty killed my father too. He soldiered on after his wife's death. A year after he made captain, he died facing a demi-human lord because it was his duty to stand for his men. His company was destroyed anyway. Still, I was proud of my mother and father who lived according to the values instilled in them. The values instilled in me. I was an idiot too, and it was only when I entered the academy that I saw just how much of an idiot I was. The service and sacrifice of my house and my people meant nothing to those who held all the power and wealth. Their lives earned no favor and bought no influence. The scions of the high nobles only measured me by what I could do for them and how I might have been most efficiently used. Students with a bright career ahead of them in the bureaucracy only saw me as a number to be employed in the cold formulas that drive the mechanisms of the state. For all the blood that my family had spilt for the sake of the empire, I could do nothing for my house, nothing for my people. Nothing except for what was allowed. Despite his efforts to suppress it, bitterness rose over his recollection. There was no scorn nor persecution, none of the obnoxiously egotistical and high-handed behavior of aristocrats portrayed in tales for the masses, only a glance and calculations hidden behind polite smiles and words. Those with power decided with whom power was shared and those who kept power only shared it if there was more power to be gained. The Imperial Magic Academy, nay, the entire imperial establishment is an institution of insidious design. Do you know that, my lady? It is a place where we are molded into forms pleasing to the imperial crown and its faceless bureaucracy. At the same time, students are told where they fit. It is a filter for the incompetent and a trap for the talented, intelligent and capable. For the empire. Lady Zaradnik seemed to digest the information, speaking after several moments. You understood this back then and still took the poison that they offered to you? She asked. As I said, Ray answered, it is a trap. The best trap is one that prey cannot do anything about even if they detect it. The cliques of martial scions were my only refuge, pens in the yard that the empire tells its martial nobles to live in. There is no other choice other than what is allowed. But I was not like all those compliant idiots that stubbornly believed in the trappings of duty and honor. I took the path that offered the highest chance of breaking the chains that bound me. The same chains that bound my father and my mother and every martial noble in the empire and every imperial knight. Chains that the strong foolishly place upon themselves for the sake of those that show the least appreciation possible in return. Merchants exploit us because the pursuit of true martial excellence leaves no room for anything else. Civilian nobles use their political wiles and closeness to the centers of power to siphon away what is bought by our blood like a swarm of bloated parasites. Commoners turn to us for protection, singing our praises when we save them and cursing our corpses when we fail. We do not exist in their minds otherwise. The honors bestowed to the best of us are but scraps cast to loyal dogs fighting for food under the table where the true feast is held. Rather than settling to be the hound, I chose to be the master of the hunt. And that is the reason for your single-minded pursuit of being a commander, the Baroness said. But what of your hounds? Are you not directing them to those same scraps? Promoting a system that you see to be inequitable? They are hardly blind to it, Ray waved a hand dismissively. Commoners are exposed to the unfairness of the world every day. They do not place undue value on intangibles as idiotic aristocrats and hopeless romantics do. As I mentioned before, they understand that their interests are served through me. The huntsman is the one that takes care of the hounds, he is not the one emptying their leftovers onto the floor. Then what is your answer? Ray narrowed his eyes. My answer? Yes, Lady Zaradnik said. Your answer. You have shared with me why you have become what you are, yet I still do not know what you want. It should be obvious by now, Ray replied. It is why I became a general of the Imperial Army. What I want is power. Authority, strength, influence, wealth. To command these is to command one's destiny. To command the destiny of others and seize what one deserves. A moment passed in silence. Lady Zaradnik tilted her head curiously. There is something else. Tell me what it is. Power is a thing of absolute beauty, my lady. The air grew still. What was he saying? No, it didn't matter. After witnessing the power of the Sorcerer King, the world had become drab by comparison. Nothing could ever come close. Life was not worth living if he could not at least reach for its feet. Baroness Zaradnik held out her right hand. Something materialized in her grasp. Before he could register what it was, a cold blade pressed against the side of his neck. Her dark-eyed gaze violently seized his own. There was no offense over his boldness, no disgust over his sentiment. The air of imperial authority, of the heated contest of wills that brought all of one's power to bear in a single glance, was absent. Her gaze was empty, a void of cold certainty that swallowed him like the darkest night. In that gaze, was death. You are not incorrect, Lady Zaradnik told him. Power is a thing of absolute beauty. People are drawn to it, long to grasp it. They cling to those who hold it in their hands. Those who possess it lust for more. It is the freedom to choose, to change, to shape the world according to one's desires. But power reveals one for what they truly are, and consumes those unworthy of it. Her quiet voice drifted across the table, carrying with it a sheer force of will that felt like it would crush him where he stood. Ray's body trembled, breath becoming erratic as excitement and arousal rose within him. This is it, this is what I wanted. Gone was the young noblewoman with her pleasant demeanor and stoic reserve. In her place was an echo of the matchless might he had witnessed when the Sorcerer King raised his arms over the Katsa Plains. Absolute beauty rendered by absolute power. Just who I need to see, huh? Ray's breathing went still at Lady Zaradnik's words. The glaive held to his neck vanished in a blink. It is what General Carbane told me before I parted ways with the 2nd Legion. Her fingertips went back to rest on the table again. And it seems that he was right on the mark. Not a trace remained of the specter of power dominating the tent mere seconds ago. Across the table, Lady Zaradnik had returned to the very image of a female martial aristocrat, but the feeling that she had left within him lingered. No matter what appearance she wore, no matter how she spoke, Ray could now sense the sheer weight of her existence shadowing her every word and action. Never in his life had he met someone like her. Even the majesty of the imperial throne seemed paltry by comparison. Do you understand what he meant by that, General Ray? I wouldn't presume to guess, my lady, Ray replied. General Carbane's vast experience makes him a far wiser man than I. There is a certain truth to what you say, Lady Zaradnik told him. Time can grant wisdom to humans, but time also takes away the years in which humans can apply that wisdom. General Carbane understands that the Sorceress Kingdom has asked the Baharuth Empire a question, but he could only provide an answer for the Baharuth Empire of today. He pointed me to you because you can provide an answer for the Baharuth Empire of the future. He nodded slowly at her words, then stopped as her brow furrowed slightly. You're not pleased with my answer, he said. Whether your answer pleases me or not has no bearing on my duties, Lady Zaradnik replied. What displeases me is that you appear to be incapable of providing a satisfactory answer, or rather than you personally, it is the Empire itself that is incapable of properly answering. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean by that, my lady. If you did, the Baroness told him, then you would be able to provide a proper answer. The Baharuth Empire is young. Like many children, it has been sheltered from the dangers of the world. Now, it is like a boy grown tall enough to believe he can reach his father's spear mounted over the fireplace mantel. To the exclusion of all else, you stretch out your hand, ignorant of the blaze burning right in front of you, or who is watching. Ray frowned at the imagery she presented. It was probably something every martial scion had attempted at least once, with less than desirable results. I worry over whether that means my mother will be coming over to spank me. Spank? Baroness Zaradnik raised an eyebrow. My mother kicked my brother straight into a stone wall. He felt himself take a step back. But I won't do that, she smirked. I don't believe that the Empire of today would survive any sort of kick from the Sorceress Kingdom. What I want from you is a proper answer, for the Empire has already chosen you to lead the Imperial Army into the future. You are one of the youngest men ever to earn the rank of general and the man who was supposed to oversee the annexation of Riastais over the next generation. Your image is portrayed on every Third Army poster in every town and city. You are a personification of the ambition, drive and will of the Empire. What is it that keeps me from providing a proper answer, my lady? Ignorance. A reality fabricated under the belief that the nursery sheltering you is the world itself. As long as you cling to those beliefs, you cannot offer the Sorceress Kingdom an informed answer. What did she mean by that? She made it sound as if reality itself was woven out of some grand illusion. It is not as complicated as it seems. Lady Zaradnik smiled slightly at his confusion. The truth is quite simple, actually. Due to the conditions under which it has developed, Imperial society has forged chains that bind its people and keep them from seeing what lies beyond the safety of the cradle. Even now, the Empire is helplessly bound by those chains as reality visits its truth upon it. The Baroness looked down at the map on the table, eyes going from feature to feature. I believe that you will be attempting to establish a foothold in the Highlands as the first step in your offensive. That's right, Ray nodded. Our reconnaissance is far from complete and still ongoing, but we've gathered enough information to believe that securing at least one of the western passes is possible with minimal casualties. If all goes well, the disruptions that we cause after breaking into the plateau will allow the divisions along the Imperial border to join us. I see, Lady Zaradnik said. In that case, I will participate as one of your captains. It should provide me with the opportunity to show you the things that you cannot yet see. You, my lady? Under me? Lady Zaradnik offered Ray a small, self-deprecating smile. Admittedly, I do not have the defense of a Death Knight or the offense of a Death Warrior, but I do hold some advantages of my own. Even so, it is highly likely that you'll be experiencing some pain. As the aggressor in this conflict, however, I believe you understand that you have no right to complain. This ravine didn't look so steep when we started. It wasn't, Frank muttered in response to Paul's griping. Now it is. Shut up, Destin hissed, you're gonna get us heard. Not that the sound of their plate armor wasn't loud enough. Joachim could cast silence, but he couldn't maintain it for hours on end and it would deafen them to their surroundings as well. Making noise was but one of many issues that plagued them as they made their way up the rocky, overgrown mountain gully. The fine mist sent up by the rushing waters nearby slicked the stones and made footing treacherous. There was essentially only one route up, which sometimes narrowed into canyons barely wide enough for a single man. Needless to say, they couldn't bring their mounts with them. He looked over his shoulder at the long line of men coming up the trail behind them. Far below, the battalion outpost could still be seen at the bottom of the valley. It had taken most of the morning to make it as far as they did and they were still far from the top of the small pass that they needed to secure. They hadn't yet encountered resistance, but Joachim had doubts as to whether they could make their way up by evening. The plan at least seemed reasonable when presented before dawn that day. Then again, it may have been because he had never done anything like it before. It was not something that anyone in Joachim's family would have considered a valid move. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a move that only General Ray would have committed to. The Imperial Army had more than a few aggressive officers, but they generally stayed within the bounds of convention and only stepped beyond those bounds if absolutely necessary. What they were doing right now would be far from necessary in the eyes of most. The 3 outposts that they had established in the valley now served as base camps for 3 different approaches to the range east of their base camp. Openly fighting their way up the mountainside as a whole battalion was an impossible prospect. They needed to secure one of the narrow passes and hold it so that everyone else could get through. From there, they would have the high ground as they worked their way down the valley on the other side. 1 company was assigned to each approach. The first departed an hour before the others in the hopes that it would be detected and become the focus of their enemy's attention. The battalion's 2 flights patrolled overhead, employing their invisibility cloaks as they swept low in their search for demi-human threats. If any company was discovered, they would dig in and fight defensively. After that, they would be taking advantage of what opportunities presented themselves. Ideally, the company facing the least resistance would receive the most air support and complete its ascent. A reasonable plan. His legs already felt like water from the ascent alone, so Joachim didn't want to know what unreasonable felt like. Will our voices even carry over this stream? Redwin asked. It isn't about what you can hear, it's about what potential scouts can hear. Just because you can't notice them doesn't mean that they can't notice you. The men who had the spare breath to whisper to one another stopped talking, focusing on their surroundings and trying to muffle the sounds of their armor. Joachim looked up the slope, then promptly turned his head away. This angle is really... For the first time in his recollection, Lady Zaradnik had donned her armor. It fit her image perfectly, but, at the same time, he wasn't sure that it was something that someone with her demeanor would wear. A part of him noted that if she was finally using combat equipment when even an Overlord had been so casually dispatched without it, he should be worried over what was to come. However, all of that was drowned out by the idea that a beautiful figure that should only exist in a bard's tale was ahead of him. She walked just behind Frank and Igval, who were in turn following Destin. The rest of their squad couldn't help but glance up at her legs clad in thigh-high stockings as the slope grew steeper and steeper. Some just silently stared the entire way, making it look like they were being pulled along by hips that swayed as she smoothly negotiated her way forward. Her skirt seemed to taunt them as it never shifted to reveal anything as they went over the rugged terrain, so it must have been a part of her magical equipment. Joachim could almost feel the men's resentment growing for the silken pleats of fabric as time went on. Their pace slowed as the company came to yet another narrow canyon cutting its way through the stone. Joachim knelt as they stopped to wait for their turn, thankful for the reprieve. "We're about halfway up," Destin said. "It's strange we haven't run into anyone yet." "Didn't you tell us to shut up back there?" Frank frowned. "Yeah," the ranger replied, "but now I'm talking." "That means you can talk now too." "Did the general say anything about the Demis?" Gaston asked. "There hasn't been any sign of them." "We know that they withdrew up into this plateau," Lady Zaradnik answered, "but we don't know where they've positioned scouts. Even if there aren't any around, however, you need to consider why that is." The squad ahead of them funneled into the canyon, boots sloshing through the half-frozen mountain stream. Joachim took a deep breath before rising to take his place in the line. The sound of the water echoing off of the high sandstone cliffs filled his ears with a cacophony so loud that he felt that his other senses were being impeded. "Hold!" The men froze. Joachim craned his neck, trying to look ahead. Destin and Lady Zaradnik knocked arrows to their bowstrings. "Can you tell what it is, Destin?" "Gaston?" Destin shook his head. "I can feel it," Gaston's shout came from behind, "but no idea what it is, milady." "You are a man from the squad ahead was lifted into the air. Startled cries rose from below him as a creature with hairy legs seemed to materialize with its attack. Crawling on the canyon wall was a spider 4 times the size of a warhorse. It skittered off with unnerving rapidity, the man fixed firmly in its fangs. Arrows bounced off of the stone in its wake. "That thing just ran off with your cleric." The Baroness' voice snapped the men out of their dumbfounded shock and they surged forward. They spilt out of the canyon entrance, fanning out to search for the 8-legged ambusher. "Over here." They followed the voice, finding a ranger from one of the other squads standing above a jagged crevice. Joachim leaned forward. "Where is he?" "Under that big-ass spider," the ranger pointed directly below. He still couldn't see anything but a film of webbing lining the interior. Then again, he didn't notice the giant tarantula until after it came down and snatched the man away. What the hell happened back here? Captain Hawk came jogging up from behind. "Priest Pelos got stolen by a huge-ass spider, sir," the ranger said. "He's wedged into this crack with it now. He'll be paralyzed from the venom," Captain Hawk muttered. "We need to drive the thing out so we can go down and get him. Can we hit it without hitting Pelos?" "Yes, sir," the ranger replied. "Just give us the word. Let's get some shields up here first." A half-dozen rangers spread out along the crevice, aiming their arrows towards where Joachim assumed was the location of the giant tarantula. Several heavy infantry stood ready to intercept in case it came charging out. Loose. Bowstrings hummed, immediately followed by a sharp hiss and the sound of many legs scrabbling up the cliff. Fortress. One of the infantrymen braced his shield against the opening. The giant tarantula went face, eyes, dash first into it. The massive arachnid body seemed to bunch up as it was arrested by the defensive art and more arrows found their way home. "Let it up," Captain Hawk ordered. "We don't want the damn thing falling on top of Pelos." The soldiers backed away, forming a wide encirclement as the giant tarantula recovered and made its way out. Several more arrows feathered it before Captain Hawk charged forward, spear brandished. Ability boost, thrust. 30 centimeters of the captain's spear buried itself in a face full of black eyes and bristly brown fur. The huge spider collapsed, leaving the 3 squads of men around it staring with weapons at the ready. Captain Hawk nudged the giant tarantula with his boot. "That was unexpected. Thought there'd be more fight in it than that." "It's just a spider, Captain." Lady Zaradnik's voice rose from the crevice and Pelos' body was rolled out in front of them. Joachim rushed forward at the same time as several other clerics to tend to the spider's victim. He lay pale and unmoving. There were 2 holes in his armor, one through each of his cuisses. Just a spider could puncture steel plate. "Will he live?" Captain Hawk asked. "He's hit pretty bad by the poison," one of the clerics replied, "but it's nothing we can't fix." "Good," the captain sighed in relief. "Let his squad handle it, we need to keep moving." As the company reorganized, Captain Hawk examined the surroundings. The stream that they had followed from the valley floor cut through an escarpment which gave them a commanding view of the surroundings. Above them, the pass could be seen above the tops of the trees and the way seemed much easier than their ascent so far. "This spot looks good for a way station," he said. "Let's keep Pelos' squad here and have the wizards fly up." "Has General Ray said anything about the other 2 companies?" Lady Zaradnik asked. "No, my lady," Captain Hawk answered. The captain paused mid-sentence, turning his gaze down towards the base camp. After a moment, he looked back at Lady Zaradnik. "Strike that, the 2nd company just started fighting on the northern approach. Hopefully, that means we're clear to take our pass. Should we slow down a bit so the demis around here leave?" "Their runners will move faster than your company, Captain," Lady Zaradnik said. "Also, even if they divert their sentries, they may reinforce the entire range in response to the attack." "Right. Well, back to it, then." Their march resumed and the company split up several columns that trudged up the thinning cover of the mountainside. Halfway to the pass, Captain Hawk sent rangers ahead to scout their objective. The atmosphere grew tense as they closed in the late afternoon, sunlight beating down on the slope. They stopped to wait for their scouts to return a kilometer below the pass. Joachim checked the condition of the men around him. Though they had been climbing for nearly 9 hours, they didn't have the beaten look from the first half of the ascent. Soldiers quietly inspected their weapons and consumables, taking the opportunity to adjust their belts and harnesses. The first of the rangers sent ahead returned 15 minutes later. Joachim walked over with Lady Zaradnik, catching Captain Hawk's discussion with the man partway. "Are you sure about that? No tricks or traps?" "We got pretty close," the ranger replied to the captain. 100 meters, maybe. There's got to be something else to it. If there is, we couldn't see it. Top of the pass is bald, so if something's waiting it's either really powerful or on the other side out of sight." Captain Hawk nodded, turning his attention down the slope. After a moment, he cursed, squeezing his eyes shut several times. "Are you all right, Captain?" Lady Zaradnik reached out to grasp his shoulder. "Yeah," he shook his head. "Just found out I was out of range the hard way. The pass is guarded, but it's 24 sentries at best. 1 second." He called one of his clerics over, instructing him to relay the information to their base camp via message. "The more ideal it seems," Captain Hawk said, "the more like a trap it looks. I want to take it right now, but with my luck, there'll be 1,000 trolls out of sight on the other side." "You don't have suitable flying summons?" Lady Zaradnik asked. "Spectral undead, perhaps?" That's necromancy, my lady," Joachim nearly shouted. "None of our clerics will have anything of the sort." He cringed at the tone of his reply. It couldn't be helped, however. Lady Zaradnik sometimes made the most absurd statements or suggestions. The way that she casually talked about the undead or a few other topics served as a periodic reminder of how different she was from an imperial noble, despite everything else. "Summon monster, then?" the Baroness asked. "A minor rare elemental would suffice." Joachim shook his head. The first summoning spell he considered was a third-tier spell to summon angels, but that would require decades of service assuming he could reach the third tier of magic at all. "I have a reply from the general, sir," the other cleric said. "The second company's having a standoff at their pass with the Demi tribe and our dragoons are tied up supporting them. General Ray's orders are to secure our pass as quickly as possible so he can have Captain Cheswin withdraw." "All right then." Captain Hawk looked out over his company. "Form up. We're storming this pass. Scouts say a couple dozen, but there may be more lurking nearby. I hope you look forward to freezing your asses off tonight." The men came together while Lady Zaradnik's bodyguard gathered behind them. "Are we fighting too, my lady?" Winston asked. "Only if we need to," the Baroness answered. "General Ray is still minding how gains are distributed between the battalion's companies. Keep your shields up and your heads down, though. Not fighting doesn't mean that rocks can't come flying over." It felt silly that they were still minding achievements with such a critical objective ahead of them. At what point would the general decide that losses to a company weren't worth the cost of being equitable? Captain Hawk's company set off at a brisk walk, no longer making any attempts at concealment. Their pace brought them above the tree line 10 minutes later. Joachim eyed the bare slopes leading up to the peaks on either side of the dry gully, his gaze stopping at every boulder and rough patch of terrain. Rationally speaking, the Rangers had gone ahead and there wouldn't be anything he could detect that they couldn't, but he couldn't help but imagine goblins with bows behind every piece of cover. The formation narrowed and what felt like a light pace turned tortuous as they reached a steep defile below the top of the pass. Joachim kept his heater shield over his head, resisting the urge to peek out and see how many goblins were looking down at them. His breath heaved as he stared at the loose gravel and jagged rocks kicked loose by the soldiers ahead. Clear. Joachim nearly lost his footing at Captain Hawk's unexpected call. The slope grew gentle as the defile opened up into a narrow saddle strewn with the bodies of goblins and ogres. "Sorry," one of the rangers in the pass sent a smug look their way, "we got greedy." "So that was really all there was?" Captain Hawk asked. "Yeah, but I doubt it's gonna stay that way for long." The ranger pointed eastward, across a shallow valley that was dominated by dry, rocky terrain and sparse woodland. Joachim's gaze was drawn to the trails of smoke rising from the mountain ridges beyond. "Those camps are pretty far off," the captain said. "We should have plenty of time to prepare." "They're not camps, sir," the ranger replied. "They're smoke signals. Those Demas might not have message or whatever, but they won't have any problems talking to one another. Everyone up here's gonna know our every move." "I want those engineers up here right now," Captain Hawk said. "If some bullshit comes boiling up this pass, we got nothing to fight from." "Yes, sir." The war wizard turned and cast a message spell. Joachim rested his shield against his leg, working off his gauntlets as he scanned the pass. The rocky saddle was bare of even grass, a bald groove between the peaks scoured smooth over the ages by the whistling wind. Its eastern descent was so gentle that he couldn't help but think it unfair compared to their western approach. A scarce handful of large boulders dotted the landscape, nowhere near enough to create any fortifications or shelter on the rapidly cooling mountain face. Spring might have come to the valley below, but snow and ice still crusted the ground here. Captain Hawk divided the company into watches and 3 squads stood shivering in their mantles as they watched for potential attacks from the east while the rest busied themselves with preparations for the night. "We can't pitch our tents, sir," one of the 3rd Company's sergeants reported. "How long till the engineers get here?" "Why do you need engineers to pitch your tents?" Captain Hawk frowned. "Ground's pure stone," the sergeant replied. "We can't get our pegs in. Couple of my guys have already broke a few. The engineers have that magic that'll change the ground, yeah?" "The engineers will be fortifying the pass," Captain Hawk told him. "They won't have any mana to spare." The sergeant turned away, scratching his head as he looked around. Joachim went over to his own squad, wondering how they would set up for the night. He frowned at the spot where Lady Zaradnik had piled her furniture, then looked over to where Paul was busy unpacking their tents and supplies. "Where did Lady Zaradnik and the others go?" Joachim asked. "Back down that defile with the others," Paul answered. "Went to get firewood and some other things." Joachim joined the Cavalier, trying to make the best out of the bleak situation. With the excitement during the unexpectedly easy occupation of the pass long faded, the only thing he could think about was the cold and the wind. "It's no wonder there were barely any defenders here," he said. "This place is inhospitable." "Yeah, and now we get to freeze our asses off guarding it. You clerics got some magic for that?" "We do," Joachim replied, "but let's see what else we can come up with first." Endure Elements was a first-tier spell that made its target impervious to a wide range of temperatures for a full day, but they were in a situation where their mana might be required for battle at any moment. 10 minutes later, Baroness Zaradnik and the rest of the squad returned, carrying 4 tree trunks between them. They set down 3 in a loose triangle while the 4th was set to the side. "Paul," she said, "start chopping this one up into firewood. The rest of you head back down and get the rest of what we need." "Yes, milady." The Baroness knelt in the middle of the 3 logs, producing head-sized stones from her magical containers and arranging them in a large circle. She dumped a pile of dried pine branches into the circle of stones, breaking them up before leaning close to strike her flint against them. A small fire rose from the makeshift fire pit and the young noblewoman rose to look down at it with a satisfied look. "That's amazing, my lady," Joachim said. "I could be mistaken, Priest Ward," Lady Zaradnik replied, "but I believe you've seen a campfire before. We might be a couple of steps ahead here, but there were other squads collecting firewood." "No, I don't think that's what I meant. It's this weird feeling, the entire company's had this lost look since they got up here. They're sort of wandering around trying to figure out what to do. You make a single move and suddenly there's structure. A campfire. Seats. I can imagine the tents around it already. The air growing warm, the wind lessening from the camp coming up around us, the smell of dinner. Everyone's noticed and now they're moving to do the same. That's just how humans are, isn't it?" The Baroness said. "They structure the world according to what they associate with their ideals. Children imitate their parents and that behavior doesn't stop upon reaching adulthood, though I suppose I'm being a bit manipulative about it." "How so, my lady?" "This company clearly has no experience surviving in this terrain, but if I try to verbally instruct them I'll be tied up for the rest of the night. Instead of trying to convince them to do anything and endlessly answering questions after that, I'm using our squad to indirectly instruct them on what needs to be done. Every step in setting up the camp that they take, the rest of the company will see and imitate. With simple examples, they'll start associating foreign things with familiar ones and develop a sense of direction from there, just like you did from seeing this campfire with its seats." Lady Zaradnik went over to retrieve Paul's growing pile of firewood, adding it to their campfire before setting up an iron tripod. She hung a cauldron over the fire and half-filled it with water before going over to sift through the squad's supplies. Steam was rising from the cauldron by the time the men returned with a boulder under each arm. "What do we do with these, milady?" "You'll be using them to anchor your tents," she replied. "We'll be putting them up in a circle around the fire this time. Put 2 boulders between each tent and tie your lines to them. My tent will be on the windward side. There should also be a couple of large tarps in the pile there to help block off the elements." The Baroness continued to tend to her cookpot, humming idly to herself as the men set up their shelters. Once her tent was raised, she disappeared into it for a while before reappearing in her usual equestrian outfit with its forest green coat. By then, most of the squad was seated around the fire, warming their hands and chatting amongst themselves. The camp was still catching up to them, but the pass had gone from a barren landscape of windswept stone to something that at least partially resembled an army encampment. After serving bowls of hearty stew to the men and joining them for a brief dinner, Joachim followed Lady Zarodnik to the company's command pavilion. Along the way, they stopped to let a large tree carried by a team of men go by towards the eastern side of the camp where a log wall was being raised across the pass. "How are they carrying that?" Lady Zarodnik asked. "The army engineers use a spell that reduces the weight of objects," Joachim answered. "Between the spells that they use to alter the terrain, reshape raw materials and move things around, they can put up fortifications that would take months of raw manual labor in days. Do you have anything like that in the Sorceress Kingdom, my lady?" "We do, but the scale is a bit different. I believe the dwarves have similar techniques for their construction, as well." They arrived at the officers' pavilion to find Captain Hawk and a few assistants rushing about. "Is something going on, Captain?" Lady Zarodnik asked. "General Ray is on his way, my lady," Captain Hawk replied. "One of the flights is carrying him up here right now." Joachim nearly rolled his eyes. Of course he would come. The man always wanted to be in the position of greatest control. "Is the rest of the battalion coming up?" "Yeah. They're even sending men up the mountain overnight." "Anything from the scouts you sent eastward?" "No," the captain said. "The rangers haven't found anything within a kilometer of the pass. I haven't sent them beyond that. They need a good rest after all their work today. Hopefully, the general doesn't order them out the second he gets here." Lady Zarodnik examined the materials being laid out in preparation for the general's arrival. Given that nearly all of their reconnaissance thus far had been from aerial observation, it amounted to mapping the terrain and identifying the larger groups of demi-humans scattered around the plateau. Given her apparent wealth of experience in the wilderness, Joachim suspected that the Baroness saw much more in the scant details than anyone in the Imperial Army did. "I understand that General Ray is an aggressive commander," she said, "but, at the same time, he doesn't appear to be foolishly unreasonable within the framework of his own knowledge. We have nearly 4,000 square kilometers to cover. Maintaining a good pace is one thing, but overtaxing ourselves at this stage is counterproductive." "Things have slowly gone sideways," Captain Hawk said. "The people in charge usually don't like that and they'll do what they can to get things back under control again. It's not just General Ray being aggressive. Every time any commander's perfect picture of things gets a little off, they react to fix it up. It at least appears that General Ray is trying to fortify his position here first," Lady Zarodnik said. "I saw that the engineers have arrived and are starting to raise fortifications for the pass. Speaking of which, how come you're not overseeing their work?" "They have their instructions from the general, so I'm just letting them do their thing. Us regular captains aren't the specialists when it comes to that stuff anyway." Captain Hawk's mouth parted in a wide yawn, nearly causing Joachim to do the same. They had been climbing since daybreak and with the sun setting across the valley, fatigue was starting to hit him all at once. He didn't envy the men on the first shift of sentry duty. Since the 3rd Company secured this pass, the Baroness told Captain Hawk, General Ray will likely send the other companies down the other side first. If he does send your men out, it shouldn't be so far that they can't return by the end of the day. "Makes sense," the captain nodded, "though I never want to climb a mountain ever again. How do we even get our horses up here?" "You probably won't get to use them at all. The 2nd Legion had the same problem in the blister, but you'll likely have an easier time here. This place is a wilderness, but the terrain isn't very difficult with a sparse vegetation and weathered landscape. Some people are talking about how there might be caves everywhere. If that's true, we could fight here for a decade and still not win. I still don't get why the higher-ups never assigned those undead to us. They'd settle things real quick, wouldn't they?" "It depends how your enemies choose to fight them," Lady Zarodnik said. "Death Series servitors are strong, tireless and can break armies that attempt to fight them directly. Like the soldiers in any army, however, they have limitations based on their specializations. Just like how you would think twice about sending heavy infantry or cavalry into battlefields unsuited for them, so too would I consider the deployment of Death Knights and Death Cavaliers along similar lines." "I was at Katza," Captain Hawk said, "so I've seen 'em in person. I can't imagine those things losing to anything." "There are powerful beings in the world that can destroy them easily," the Baroness replied. Environmental hazards are a problem as well. They can lose their footing and fall off of cliffs or just get forced off of them through various means. Beyond that, different types of terrain affect mobility, and adversaries that can move easily in poor terrain will run circles around them. Flying opponents with countermeasures against projectile attacks are a problem as well. Last spring, a druid lit one of my death knights on fire and it could only burn there impotently as the druid couldn't be reached. Were druids that strong? The vast majority of them were considered pests by the Empire as they constantly acted to impede development and resist frontier expansion. Imperial progress would come to a standstill, or perhaps even regress, if they were strong enough to defeat a Death Knight. The rest of Lady Zaradnik's claims were plausible when brought to their attention. Though many believed that raw power was the be-all end-all, the world was generally not so straightforward and there were realities that even the strong could not simply ignore. General Ray arrived within the hour, as did the battalion's mages who used fly spells to rapidly ascend the pass. "Good work with the pass, Hawk," the general said. "Not sure if it was good work or not, sir," the captain replied. "We sorta just walked up here. It was more than we could manage with the other two passes. How are things looking up here?" "Aside from cold and bleak, not much. I think the Demis know we're here, but there hasn't been any sign of retaliation on its way." The general nodded with a satisfied look as if Hawk's words were just what he wanted to hear. "It's as I expected," General Ray said. "They might be organizing, but they're nowhere near ready to fight. We need to press the attack and keep them off balance. Our next move will be split into two parts. We'll send a detachment north to secure a pass for the 4th Division while the rest of us head eastward. How we'll advance will depend on what we find out over the next day, but I suspect that we'll be overwhelming them up here just as we've done below. Except that we don't have our horses," Captain Hawk noted. "Our logistics will be affected." "Yes," the general nodded, "but a soldier can march the same distance as a horse in a day. In this terrain, we'll probably be moving faster than if we had horses. As far as combat is concerned, our striking power will be reduced, but we'll still be able to clear out the tribes while they're still disorganized. Aerial reconnaissance will keep track of demi-human movements in the region and will eventually figure out where this enemy commander is. By striking him down, we'll decisively put an end to their attempts at organized resistance for the foreseeable future. I doubt that any more hobgoblins will pop up after we deal with this first batch." General Ray's confident tone left little room for doubt. Joachim's sense that the general was being aggressive was still there, but everything stated was based on simple, irrefutable truths. The organization of forces took time, and the Imperial Army had no issues with the poorly equipped and disorganized tribes in the wilderness thus far. Once their reconnaissance elements identified demi-human warbands large enough to threaten a company, they would have as hard a time hiding from the Imperial Army as the Imperial Army had hiding from them. Hobgoblins did not mysteriously spawn out of thin air as the undead did, so once they were dealt with, the unification of the wilderness tribes against the Imperial Army would become slow and difficult. Once they knocked out the would-be leaders of the enemy forces, the Imperial Army could take their time with the rest. For the detachment headed north, Captain Hawk said, "I heard Cheswin couldn't make any ground at all. Will our luck be any better from this side?" "His orders were to fight defensively," General Ray replied, "and that's what he did. From his report, it was pretty much a standoff with a lot of rocks and arrows being traded. The air wing got a decent count, a medium-sized demi-human tribe of around 500. Mostly goblins, of course. 500, there's bound to be at least one lord in all that. More, depending on who's leading it." Captain Cheswin noted that it looked like trolls were in charge, so we probably have one powerful troll acting as the leader of the tribe. Captain Hawk stared at the pass marked out on the map, expression turning grim. "Dealing with a powerful troll and its tribe will be a lot of work, sir," he said. "How many companies are you sending?" "I'll be sending the 10th company, along with Baroness Zaradnik." Joachim blinked, his gaze going between General Ray, Captain Hawk, and Lady Zaradnik. Was the general really planning on using her like this? Would she so simply agree? Are you sure about that, sir?" Captain Hawk asked. "I don't doubt her abilities, but I believe that there was something that Lady Zaradnik wished to bring to our attention," General Ray answered as he glanced at the Baroness. "You're right, Your Excellency," Lady Zaradnik replied. It presented itself sooner than I expected, but this appears to be an ideal opportunity. I suspect that it will be an eye-opening experience.